Okay, in this video I'd like to talk about how to find the vertex of a parabola, and along the way we're actually going to talk about two different ways to write quadratic functions. One we're used to already, which is f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. The other way to write a quadratic function is f of x equals a parentheses x minus h, the quantity squared, plus k. The second one is actually called the standard form of a quadratic equation, or standard form of a parabola. And the reason this ties into finding the vertex is that if you stare at these two formulas, the letter A is the same letter A. They're going to use the same number. And the numbers h and k are actually going to be the same numbers that show up in the vertex. So h is going to be the x coordinate of the vertex. K is going to be the y coordinate of the vertex. So what this means is that if we know the vertex, we can immediately write down this equation, and vice versa. So like if I told you a parabola has A is 3 and vertex 5, 1, then that would be immediately telling you the A, the H, and the K, and so we could plug into this standard form of the parabola, immediately jump to having an equation f of x is equal to 3 parentheses x minus h, which is x minus 5, the quantity squared, plus k, which is 1. Same example, if A had been 9 and the vertex was -1, -4. The only thing to be careful of here is we're going to have more negative signs. Life's going to be a little bit more interesting. So our f of x is going to be 9 for the A. X minus h is going to be x minus -1 squared. And then plus k is going to be plus -4. And probably I should put those in parentheses, but realistically, if I see minus a negative or plus a negative, I'm just going to rewrite those. So I would probably write this as 9 parentheses x plus 1 quantity squared and -4. Okay, on the other hand, if someone gave you an equation like this, we can immediately jump back to what was the vertex. So if someone told us fx was 3 parentheses x minus 5, the quantity squared, plus 1, then the 5 is playing the role of h, the 1 is playing the role of k. If someone gave us this equation, we have to be a little bit careful because the plus 1 is playing the same role as minus h, which means that -1 is going to be your h. And same thing over here, -4 is playing the same role as positive k, and so k is going to be -4. And so if someone gave us this equation and asked us to find the vertex, we could do that. We'd find h is -1, k is -4, and that's the vertex for this particular example. Okay, so now we have to get back to how do we actually come up with this equation. If someone gives us an equation in this format, great, we can do some things with it. But if someone gives us an equation in this format, how do we move it to this standard form? And in order to do that, I'm going to just skip the complicated ways and show you the simplest way to relate a, b, c, and a, h, and k. And it's the following. H is going to be equal to -b divided by 2a. And k is going to be f of h. Okay, so at first glance, it looks like, oh man, we have two more formulas we're going to have to memorize, and we are going to need to know these. But at second glance, it's not that terrible. It's not like a new complicated thing to memorize, because this is actually something we've seen before in some sense. If you think all the way back to quadratic formula, it was -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. And what we're saying is that the vertex is basically going to be the same formula, only we don't need the radical. So the -b over 2a bit is actually going to tell us what is the h, or the x coordinate of the vertex. K is going to be the y-coordinate of the vertex. And so that's also hopefully not going to be too complicated to remember, because if you know the x value, to get the corresponding y value, we just stick the x value in. So let me show you with an example. Let's look at f of x is equal to 3x squared minus 12x plus 2. So there's our a, b, and c. And so h is minus b over 2a, which is minus negative 12 divided by 2a, which is 2 times 3. Negative 12 would be a positive 12 in the numerator. 2 times 3 is a 6 in the denominator. And so we get our h is equal to 2. So that's the x-coordinate of the vertex. So I can already say my vertex is 2 comma something. Okay, to find the y-coordinate, all I'm going to do is take the x. Let's even be more clear. X is the same thing as h. H is just the name I'm using for the x-coordinate of the vertex. The vertex is h comma k. H is playing the role of x. K is playing the role of y. So if I want to find the corresponding y, which I'm calling k, we could also use y, all we're going to do is we're going to stick the x value we came up with back in and find the corresponding y. So 3 times 2 squared minus 12 times 2 plus 2. Let's see, 4 times 3 is a 12 over here, minus 24 plus 2. And if I can do some arithmetic in my head, we end up with a negative 10. And so our y value is negative 10. And so that's our vertex. And continuing from what we talked about in the last video, if we wanted to find the graph, this is the point that our graph would change at, where it would put its vertex. And the fact that a is 3 means that the graph is opening upward. So if we wanted to draw a graph, we'd start with a point at 2, negative 10, and then we draw it opening upwards because a is 3. Okay, so that's how we're going to find a vertex, is this minus b over 2a, which we've kind of seen before. That's our h, and then plug the h in to find the corresponding k. So I'm saying y is k, or it's f of h. So we're just sticking the x in to find the corresponding y.